One. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, August 9th, 2023. This is the Arlington County Board of Equalization hearing. There's 6 cases on the agenda. We're going to start with the first case, RPC 15046-011. Property is located at 3140 17th Street North. And I believe we have Mr. King and Mr. Zahid on. Mr. Zahid, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us of this property, sir.
Good morning, and thank you very much, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate this opportunity to consider revising the valuation of our 2-bedroom 1938, one of the smallest houses in the area, valuation to where the market is, and which we have verified with several participants to be notably off what the market would pay for this house today. The way the county does it is a sum of parts, which may leave out some of the details. So there are significant discounts that are applied for a lot which is corner, which is irregular, which has severe water issues, and which has boundary issues that the board is aware of from hearings a couple of years ago. There also appears to be some misunderstanding and confusion based on the write-up that I read last night, which refers to windows and HVAC being replaced in 2020, and the life of the house increased by 10 years. That is not factual. We bought this place in 2004. It had original windows, single pane, most of them locked, very drafty. A couple of them broke in the storm. We were effectively broke. These are non-standard size windows, so very expensive to replace with original windows. So in 2004, we replaced them with sash kits. They're not even windows, they're sash kits. And those jambs have over almost 20 years now warped and deformed. And more than half of them don't even open today. So there is clearly some misunderstanding somewhere, which has resulted in this very high valuation of the building, at the same time not applying any discounts for corner, irregular, boundary issues, water issues. This is the point we tried to make, that most of the houses that we looked at, older houses, even refurbished ones, the buildings are valued around 120, as low as $90 per square foot. We are almost double of that. And I think that's a result of these misunderstandings that have occurred for some reason. If you would allow me to share my screen, I can show you some of the pictures of the windows and the AC unit to put things in perspective.
Okay.
And only if I can figure out how to do that now. So as you can see here, this is not even a window. It's a sash kit. The jamb is deformed and it's from 2004. It's not 2020. For that to then increase the age of the house by 10 years also. This is the upper level, rotting and going on, and you can see again, this is a jamb. It's not a window. On the AC, I mean, where is it? I don't know if you can see it. This is 19 years old. And I put tapes on it because the plastic has completely deteriorated with direct sun for 19 years. And the things are falling apart. I repainted it a couple of years ago. And that is true of most appliances in the house. They're 15, 17, 18 years old. And this is the main condenser. You see the rot on it. This is a decade old. It also refers to a tool shed and a pergola in the write-up. Tool shed is because we had to move, the board advised us to move the old shed, which was put there by the previous owner. And the pergola, I mean, every time the valuation was increased by $50,000, $70,000, $80,000, which the market does not pay for. We also looked at, some of the comps, and something I would like to share with you here. This is the house right at the back. When we talk about equity and fairness, which basically increased our, I don't know how to go there now. You can see that this was sold for 2.5 million, but the valuation from the county was 2 million. In 2017 and in 2018, $500,000 below where it was sold. And this is the sold price you can see from June of 30, more than 6 years ago. The write-up says that it was sold for 2.4 and it is valued at 2.4. Yes, so in 6 years, its value has not increased at all, but ours has gone up by almost 80%. And this, again, as I said at the beginning, I don't know how much time I've left, it has to be market value. The market applies significant discount. There's no refurbishing done inside. We have not done any work since 2004, except the sunroom project that the board is aware of. It has not been gutted to the studs. It is not open concept. There are no walk-in closets. The bathrooms are really small. And I have pictures to show you as well. This is a lot of you would know Billy Buck. He values it, I've highlighted it, from 1.25 to 1.3 million. This is another one, our own Probasco. He has given us an offer. He even gave the comps. And he says very clearly corner lots and all that. And he's saying 1.325. He even sent us a contract. This is also another very well-known gentleman, David Cabo. He puts it at 1.3, maximum 1.35 with some work done. The maximum valuation we got is from Lauren, who's also apparently very well known, very experienced, knows the area well at Northern Virginia Realty. She's saying maximum will go to 1.375, but that we have to stage it, do the repairs and other things. So that's an expense anywhere 50 to 70,000 to get to 1.375. On the low side, here's a new one, which I had not mentioned to staff before. Another gentleman who is making the same points, given the property size and condition, an investor will likely purchase it. And he's suggesting to list it at just 1.1 million to attract interest. He mentioned around 1.3 is what we will get. This is where we are. So we therefore request your consideration to please base it on the market and not some sum of parts and remove these confusion. This is not a 2000 built house. This is a 1938 structure in pretty much the original form, original floors, plaster walls. It still has old wiring in it, metal pipes and stuff. So I'll stop there and I thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. King for the county, please.
Good morning, board. This property is a 2-story single-family home with 2 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, an unfinished basement, and a detached garage. The property was built in 1938. There have been some renovations. As you can see, there's a side addition on the property now. After renovations, it has an effective age of 2000, and it originally had a quality of very good plus before the review. The property was not inspected. So sometimes we do have to use our best judgment, from the field, looking at the property from the street, seeing what we can do from the plans on file. We tried to work with the appellant to get this one inspected, but we couldn't get it worked out. We would love to get in and see the current state of the property. Nothing was provided to us, interior photos, any kind of inspection report or anything like that. Or in terms of what repairs or improvements are needed on the property, none of that was provided to us as well. This property is in Lion Village, so much of the value is going to be in the land. The current improvement value is less than it was in 2019 even. So land value is going to be market-based, and this area does see land sales regularly above $1 million. So now the property wasn't inspected, but I did go over the record and the other comps in the area. One of the other similar properties that the appellant brought up was 1504 North Highland Street. This property is similar than the subject above ground square footage, but it does have a finished basement, but it has the same number of bathrooms. This property is at very good minus, so we felt that this quality was in line with the subject property for the size of the house, the room count, the renovations, and the garage being present. So while the subject property has a revised 2023 value of $1,537,900, the sales analysis sheet for Lion Village on page 14 shows that many of the sales in the neighborhood are in the upper 1 millions or even above 2 million. So it's not out of line for a smaller, older property like this to be about 1.5 million. The comp sheet shows other relatively smaller properties in the area that have recently sold. Number 1 and number 2 especially show that the $1.5 to $1.7 million range that a lot of these smaller properties achieve in the area, they achieve that simply for their location. So with the changes made to the property for 2023, the department recommends a confirmation of the revised 2023 value of $1,537,900. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, this is for the county. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of comps in Lion Village. One of your comps is in Lion Park. I mean, isn't that a totally different dynamic in Lion Park versus Lion Village?
Sure. So some of it is going to be just trying to find some of these smaller properties. You know, a lot of that stuff in Lion Village has been renovated and expanded, and then a lot of the older stuff sells off market. So, you know, I was trying to show that, you know, smaller properties that are on the open market in the larger, you know, Clarendon Courthouse area can achieve, you know, those mid 1 millions. But it's difficult. It's always going to be difficult with, you know, smaller properties, older properties, things like that.
Smaller, you mean the house size?
Smaller, yes. Yeah, square footage for the actual improvement.
Okay. Mr. Matzkin, or yeah. Mr. Matzkin, go.
Okay. First question, easy question for the appellant. Why wasn't, you spent a lot of time on the fact that your house is not highly modern, but yet nobody came in to verify that. What happened with the inspection dynamic?
Thank you for the question. As I noted before, there are some confusions in the record. The county has inspected the property at least a dozen times between 2015 and 2020. And several times they came in, many times without any paperwork, without any notice. They have seen the property inside out several times. This time, there was again a lot of confusion on the timing. The board's website was locked as of April 17 something. I had to work it out through emails, and I was traveling. My father was ill. I had actually spoken with Mr. King. My father was very ill, who passed away. I had other personal things. I was not in town, and there was very little time between when we submitted the request and now.
Okay, thank you.
I did offer it 2 days ago. If you will please allow me now that I have it. Mr. King mentioned this comp.
Okay, I'm sorry. No. We're in questions now. You'll get a chance to wrap up.
Thank you.
Mr. Matzkin, did you have a
Yeah, I
follow-up
had a
question?
question for the department. You seem to like this comparable 1504 Highland Street, North Island Street. And the assessment, though, is, you know, a bit lower. We don't have a full breakout of it, of course, you know, on the comparable sheet. Let me rephrase the question. I had several questions. Excuse me.
Okay,
Go to somebody else. I
while
can't
you
read my
gather
notes.
your thoughts.
While you're thinking, I'll ask
I'm
the
not
question.
thinking. I
While
can't
you're
read.
gathering your thoughts, Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, this is for the owner. When you say the county inspected, county's been in there, was that real estate assessment department personnel, or was that other departments in the Arlington government?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Lawson. They have and done at least 3 that I can recall over the years, assessments for real estate valuation, and the others were for all that sunroom project, the shed moving, and the pergola. The pergola, the material cost 700. The county increased valuation by 70,000. But that's a separate point. The thing is that they have gone inside the house even when the work was not related to inside the house. That was the point I was making. And the 3 of the visits were specifically for the valuation. This is not the first time we have come to your authorities for a higher valuation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Matskin again.
I'm more prepared, thank you. On that for the department, so you had no records from the prior Department of Real Estate Assessment visits into this place? You said you had no pictures, you had no documentation.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So 2016, an appraiser left a door hanger at the property for the permit for extending the sunroom and adding the 2-story addition. We did not go inside at that time. It was just a simple permit pickup. It looks like we were not contacted. And then in 2020, we went out for the permit for install pergola and build new tool shed. It said that we talked to the owner in the field, and he was just not happy with the department being there. So there was no interior inspection. That's when the note here that was do not visit, owner requested no one access this property. That's when that was added to the parcel. And then again, for this year, 2023, we were not allowed inside or on the property. So we have not been, I don't know what department has been inside the property, but it has not been the Department of Real Estate Assessments.
Right, that's direct answer to my question. The other question is, the appellant brought up this assessment history at 3147 Key Boulevard. And that, while his assessment goes up regularly and significantly, that one is flat. Do anything about that?
I mean, we've got this one, it goes up about $1 million a year. 2020, it was 2.2, 2021, 2.25, 2022, 2.35, and this year it's 2.46. It is increasing. We've been out to the property a couple times now with the permit work and stuff like that. So there are changes when we go out to, a review or something that aren't going to be just rolled into the annual changes that are property. So, back in 2020, we were there for the permit work that was done. So there is some change there. But again, the subject property has gone down in improvement value over the last 4 years. So it's even less than it was in 2019.
Yeah.
Most of that's going to be in land. I mean, land is just market based. We're not, it's not going to go down when the land's going up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay, Mr. King, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Sure. So without an inspection, the department did as much as it could based on the records that we have and the visual appearance of the property. Being in Lion Village, much of that value is going to be on the land, and the sales of similar smaller homes in the neighborhood support the revised 2023 value of $1,537,900. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zahid, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Thank you so much. I would reiterate that we are valued at $230 per square foot when every other property is around 110, 120. This is way off. This is not even close. Property that you mentioned and you even asked question, 1504 North Highland, is public record available through many websites that is actually renovated. It's 2,296 square feet. It is extended at the back. All 3 bedrooms have walk-in closets, etc. And it comes to $126 per square foot. We put this information in there. The county record is not correct on inspections. I would leave it at that.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, just among the board. Where is everybody on this? Mr. Penaranda.
I looked at, the comparables that the appellant provided, and most of them, I think the main difference is the land base value, because some of the comps that he brought up, the land base is at 900,000. This is a lot more than that, 1,150,000. And I don't really see a lot of compelling evidence that he brought besides comparing per square footage based on the building itself, not on the total value of the property. So I'm not, inclined to make any changes based on that.
Yeah, I have an issue with the whole inspection. You know, even if the last time they were out there was 2020, it's still 3 years ago. You know, I don't think they got in. You know, I think that if they're questioning the interior and some of the issues in the house, I think an interior inspection certainly would have been helpful to not only to the county, but to the board. And it looks like a lot of the issues are deferred maintenance. You know, so I don't feel sympathetic to it. Gentlemen, over here, all right?
Well, I just did simple arithmetic. Let me do it again. I don't have $230 a square foot and $204 a square foot.
Mr. Yates?
$4 a square foot.
The valuation back in 2020 was 1,332,000. A couple of years back, really. I feel for him. I understand, and he is an older house, but I'm looking at the houses around him, and it's really in the land value.
Okay.
His house, compared to some of the others around him that haven't been renovated yet, are comparable on the improvement value. So it's land and improvement, and not comparing him to the bigger houses, but the ones that are very similar to his. I understand where he's coming from, but it's not that far off.
If someone bought, Mark, don't you think they would have to do some major interior work?
Oh, yeah.
Modernize it.
You could drop 100 and some thousand in it. But that's that's deferred maintenance.
Most of it appears to be.
Yeah, I mean, if I were going in there, I would clearly most likely end up doing the kitchen. You're gonna do new lighting. It sounds like he's got, it sounds like he has some things in windows probably, but they still don't come to that much. I mean, you're gonna drop your 70, 100,000 into this house.
And it's going to bump it even higher.
You think Norma would buy it for the assessed amount? Because he does mostly Lion Village.
Okay, Mr. Matthew?
Yeah, my question is the two major improvements that brought the effective age to 2000 were improvements that happened at about year 2000. And to me, that doesn't seem, the whole house can't be brought up to the date.
Right, and that would be an argument if this was 2001, but now it's 2023, so it's 23 years old.
So you're saying it's an
Yeah.
older effective
I mean,
age.
I'm not disagreeing with that
No, I want to
argument.
hear it.
Right.
I think that argument was valid in 2001.
So you're saying now, whether it's 95 or 90 or 2000, it's just not going to matter much.
Not, nearly 25 years ago. I mean, if they had brought it to 2020, then I would probably,
Yeah,
jump in on
right,
your
right.
argument there.
Okay, good. That's what I brought up.
Ken, the bottom line for me is looking at the other houses that have not had that much
Renovation.
renovation compared to his, or more similar to his. He's in line with them. There's a lot of value in that land.
Well, he did the right thing by appealing.
Yeah.
Because he got their attention, even though it's a partial inspection, it mattered a lot relative to the current versus last year's evaluation. Maybe that's
Right, and I would
where the
suggest
benefit is. for the
make an
appellant.
appointment
Yeah.
to let them get in to see it for next year. But all right, anything further? No? All right, then. Do I have a motion? What's my number here? Go ahead.
I move to accept the county's revised, and John Fetterman, revised assessment of $1,537,900.
I'll second it.
Motion is second by Mr. Penaranda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is 4-1, and that's without Mr. Lawson. The county's revised assessment has been confirmed at $1,537,900. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, do we have Ms. Foreman? Mr. Harmon?
What's the next one, Mary?
Yes, good morning.
214.
Good morning.
Okay, and we have okay, so I'm just gonna ask, do you have a timer
Yes, I do.
ongoing? Okay, perfect. So we're good. Okay, the second case on the agenda is RPC 130270044, the property located at 750 North Glebe Road. And Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share my screen with some of the documents we provided to both the board and the DREA. Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, Annetta, good morning. This property is the Waycroft Apartments and Associated Retail in Ballston. The issues on appeal are the concessions rate, the operating expenses, and the capitalization rate. Now, if you look at the board pack, the DREA test page is a little difficult to track how it has the economic unit broken down between market, affordable, and retail. I'll be discussing the property as a total economic unit since that is the way the owner operates it. So to ease your all's review, I recommend looking at the taxpayers column I on the test page. This is the 2022 actual figures from the property. And then you can find a DREA consolidated column with all three assessments consolidated on page 5. That will give you a easy way to compare the 2022 and the assessment. So this property opened in 2020 and it was stabilized by January 1st, 2022. The 2023 test value represents an increase of $13 million from the 2022 assessment. Why the increase? First, looking at the DREA test column, we see that it projects an increase over what the property achieved in 2022 in gross potential income. They project an increase of 2.3%, but only project an increase in operating expenses of 0.3%. This doesn't make sense, especially given the record inflation in the market. Additionally, most new properties have lower operating expenses the first few years in operation due to many of the repairs and expenses being covered by warranties. So the test column understates the increase in operating expenses that the property will incur in 2023, projecting near zero growth from 2022 levels. Next, the test imputes vacancy, collection, and concessions at just over 6% for the economic unit. The actual rate was 7.3% over the course of 2022. Again, this property was stabilized in 2022 with an average vacancy of only 2.3%. In order for the property to achieve this level of occupancy and the related income, it had to give concessions. Concessions were given throughout 2022 and being offered as of the end of the year, as you can see on page 37 of the board pack. This property was offering $1,000 off any vacant unit, plus waiving the $600 move-in fee for new tenants. Concessions have been offered throughout 2023 as well. And if concessions do decrease in the future, the annual nature of the assessment cycle will capture it at that point. Concessions, the market has seen a record number of new inventory coming online. This is due to projects that were delayed during the start of COVID now coming to completion. With the increase in competition, concessions necessarily play a bigger role. The test column projects vacancy, rent loss, and concessions to decrease by $200,000 from the 2022 level, which again, in 2022, the property averaged only 2.3% vacancy. Essentially, it was fully occupied, yet still incurring this level of concessions. The owner anticipates unit turnover to be slightly higher in 2023 than it was in 2022, and for vacancy and collection loss and concessions to be in line with the 2022 figures. Now to the third point, the DREA has assessed this property at a combined market cap rate of only 4.32%, using the same rates each of the past 4 years and the lowest cap rate of multifamily for any of the past 15 years. Now, I want to mention what is shown on the test page as the cap rate by the DREA. This is actually a number representing 3 different components. This number is the market cap rate plus the tax rate plus an assumption for replacement reserves. If we back out the tax rate and the replacement reserves, we see that the DREA has used market cap rates for the market multifamily units of only 4.1%. For the affordable units, a market cap rate of 4.85%. And for the retail, a market cap rate of 5.95%. These cap rates are all low for where the market stood as of the date of value. I want to focus on the market unit cap rate of 4.1% since this portion makes up the vast majority of the assessment. As of the date of value, the SOFR was 4.3%, to put this in perspective. Over the course of 2022, the cost of capital increased more than any other year in the past 50. The Federal Reserve hiked interest rates by 425 basis points, which was matched by the increase in the SOFR rate, which went from 0.05% on January 3rd to 4.3% on December 30th, 2022. The 10-year T-bill increased by 236 basis points over this same period. The assessment's market cap rate increased by 0. Again, as of the date of value, the SOFR, the cost of capital, was 4.3%, which effectively means it would cost you more to borrow capital to purchase this property than the return the DREA has assessed the property at. That's before the lending spread for risk. Keep in mind the total return represented by the cap rate is the return of and return on capital. So at the DREA rates, you won't even recover your cost of capital. The DREA cap rates for a property of this class and age increased by 125 basis points the last time interest rates increased substantially. In 2009, the DREA cap rates went from 4.7% to 5.95%. The DREA cap rates were 4.75% as recently as 2014 and 15 and have only been decreased by the department since then. Higher interest rates do affect property values via higher cap rates. Peter Rothman, Green Street's co-head of strategic research, stated last November that higher yields on treasury bonds equals higher cap rates. This is known in the market, yet the DREA has not taken into account any of the increases over 2022. Again, 425 basis point increase in the SOFR, 236 basis point increase in 10-year T-bill. Knowing that cap rates increased from January 1, 2022 to January 1, 2023, what is the appropriate amount to assess this property at? We conservatively applied 75 basis points based on a Wilkes Artist survey of 72 multifamily market participants whose responses indicated cap rates had increased between 50 and 200 basis points, with most saying the increase was 75 to 100 basis points. The Delta Associates survey, which is a local market survey, indicated that Class A high-rise apartment cap rates increased by 116 basis points to 5.11% from year-end 21 to year-end 22. Next, CBRE reported Class A multifamily cap rates increased by 100 basis points from first half of 2022 to the second half of 2022. This is all information that was known in the market as of the date of value. Knowing this, we conservatively chose 75 basis points as an appropriate cap rate adjustment. Finally, if we look at the sales the DREA has included as support, we see that any property comprised of market units that were sold or agreed to in the first, they were all sold or agreed to in the first 4 months of 2022 before the effective interest rates were being felt by the market. The first sale listed in the guidelines is a redevelopment project. The second sale is affordable housing. The next 4 sales were all first quarter deals, which the owner confirmed. The owner of those sales also confirmed that cap rates increased over the remainder of 2022 and would be at a minimum of 5% by the date of value. Finally, there was a question last year about Target paying percent rent. I looked at that lease and confirmed that Target is not paying percent rent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shuttleworth?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Again, the subject property is a mixed-use, high-rise, multi-family building with 491 units, out of which 22 are committed affordable units. The retail component has approximately 60,100 square feet, and Target is the anchor tenant with the lease in place, which expires in 2036. Based on the actual rent roll, the retail space had 8.6% physical vacancy. An interior and exterior inspection was conducted on June 21, 2023, and according to the property manager on site, the apartment component was approximately 97-98% occupied. The issues are the appellants believe that DREA has overestimated the GPI, failed to account for the actual vacancies and concessions, and underestimated the OPEX. The appellants are also disputing the cap rate. And we have performed the analysis. We have looked at the INE survey submitted for years 2020 to 2022. If you could direct your attention to the summary sheet, I'm not sure which page is it in your packet. So in 2020 and 2021, the property was in its lease-up phase and the vacancies and concessions were high at 69.58% in 2020 and at 16% in 2021. In 2022, the reported vacancy and concessions declined by 62%, and the apartment rental income increased by 7.39%. Other income streams noted two-digit increases. The vacancies and concessions were at the time at 7.2%. The property no longer offers free rent. I just looked it up yesterday. They are currently offering $300 off move-in fees and free parking for the first 3 months. In our revision columns H1 and H2, we adjusted the apartment income. The rental rates we used are very well supported by the actual rental as of January 1, 2023. If you looked at the actual rental and revised mixed use sheet, you can see that we were very conservative. Our projected rental income increased by less than 0.5%. Our projected GPI increased by less than 1%. And finally, our projected NOI increased by 2.66%. As of June 2023, the market rates for one-bedroom apartments were 28% above the rate we used in our revised columns H1 and H2. The same goes for the market rates for two-bedroom units. DREA's rates used in columns H1 and H2 are 39% below as compared to the current market rates. These market rates were provided by the property manager during an on-site inspection. As you can see in our revision columns, we also increased the OPEX. Based on the INE surveys provided, the reported OPEX was declining as the property was reaching its stabilization. The OPEX ratio went down from 63.86% in 2020 to 29.26% in 2021, and finally down to 26.34% in 2022. For 2023 guidelines, we have also applied 5.15% cap rate for market units, 5.9% cap rate for the affordable units, and 7.15% cap rates for the retail portion. In the 2023 pro forma, the appellants applied a 6.154% cap rate. The appellants contest the cap rates based on the 10-year Treasury note, which have heavily fluctuated throughout the 2020. And yes, as of December 31st, it was rated at 3.88%, but as of January 1, it was rated at 1.7%. And as the appellant stated, as of December 2022, the note was rated at 1.5%. They did not contest the cap rates then. And again, they're bringing up SOFR rates, but they don't provide any information on those in place. If you bring this as an argument, you could at least tell us how the SOFR rates affected the client. We have no knowledge of any loans in place. They left that section on INE 9. So that is all.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board members? Mr. Metzger.
Two questions. One for the department. You said that you looked and saw that there is half price on the move-in fee and no free rent at all. Is that recent? That
was as of June.
That's as of June. So, but you don't know what the situation is on January 1st, 2023 in those two.
Well, as the appellant stated, it was, I believe, 1,000 of the rent. So I'm not sure, but they did.
I'd like to hear. It's part of my question. Could you tell me that, Jordan? On January 1st, what was the concessions? Because you have a really big number.
End of 2022, November 15th, they were advertising $1,000 off vacant units and waiving a $600 move-in fee. And I did confirm with the owner that they do project 2023 concessions to be in line with 2022.
That part I recall. Okay, great. My question for the appellant is, in 2022, you show for retail no pass-throughs. That's a lot of retail. They're not paying those big companies pass-throughs? Looking at column G.
In column G, let me see. So they do report this as a combined, let me look at the I&E, because if there are pass-throughs, they may be reporting it with the retail rental income, so.
Because the department's counting it in H3. I want to know if it's real or not, or did they made a mistake.
So they do have on the, let me make sure this is 2022.
And A, B, and D, A, B,
So
and
it's
D. don't have
the
any.
2022, Mr. Metzgen, I&E is on page 42. You can see the income section. They do report retail income on line IO3, and then they report reimbursements on line IO5. So I'm not sure how that lines up with how it's presented on the DREA test page, but they do report $657,700 in utility services, reimbursements, and RUBs. And then another $540,000 in miscellaneous income. And again, they operate this as one economic unit. So the income, some of that may be commingled with the residential.
Well, I think the utilities passed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Lawson?
So this is,
Yeah, this is for, it's Silver Diners in here, right?
yes,
Yeah,
Silver Diners and Tennis. When did they open up?
see if I can find that for you, Mr. Lawson.
Fairly recent is my recollection.
2022.
Last year.
Yeah, it was last year.
So their lease start date was July of 22.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
One quick, just
Mr.
because this
Matzkin.
is such a morass. For the department, you project in H3, 4.58% increase in retail rental. And typically it's 3%, and for quality companies with long-term leases, it's usually less than that. So where's this number?
So if you can refer to the revised mixed use sheet for the commercial value component. These are the per square foot rates we have used. And they are supported by the retail rental provided by the
Okay, so you read, that's
We
what
looked
they're
at
paying.
the.
Extraordinary. Okay, sanity check, thank you. Reality check, thank
Any,
you.
any final questions? No, okay. Ms. Shuttlesworth, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes. Thank you. Again, when you look at the actual rentals, it is evident that the revised rental income used in columns H1 and H2 is very well supported. Outside of the I&E surveys, this actual rental is probably the best supporting data for draft projected GPI. Either way you slice it, these were rents actually achieved as of January 1, 2023. And they're very difficult to dispute or disregard. The property offered significant concessions during its lease-up phase, and in 2022, they were able to achieve an over 26% increase in the NOI, and they reduced the vacancy and concessions down to 7.27%. We asked the board to take these factors under consideration. With that being said, we asked the board to confirm the subject's 2023 revised assessment at $363,494,800.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yes, thank you. Again, we don't dispute the income increase. We dispute the income increasing with not a consummate increase in the operating expenses. They project operating expenses staying flat year over year. That's not in line with the market. The property was stabilized over the course of 2022. It had an average of 97.7% occupancy over 2022. And yet it still had these concessions. It requires these concessions in the competitive market to have that occupancy level. The owner projects higher turnover this year and concessions to be in line with last year's. Finally, the cap rates, all the available data we have says that cap rates have increased. And just a last note on the DREA tests, they do, what they list as cap rates is the market cap plus a tax rate plus an assumption for replacement reserves. They're assessing market rate units at 4.1% cap rate. That's below the SOFR rate of 4.3% that a market participant would pay for this. And that's what's important, is it's a market participant. It's not how this affects the owner. It's how does the market impact it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. It's just among the board members. Where are folks on this?
Mr. Lawson.
Mr. Lawson?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start off. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was yesterday, talking about how financing for these type of projects has gone way up as far as interest rates and cash investment and so forth and so on. And that's definitely out there. And as these loans mature, their owners are going to have to face this. So I see that. I see the argument for raising the cap rate, and I think maybe the cap rate should be adjusted, but I'm not I don't think I'm competent to determine how much. So I looked at, I think this is a improving situation. And because it's improving, you got Silver Diner in, and assuming you spread out just the increase in anticipated income the county projects, you're only talking about $70 a residential unit. And then you also have the retail. So I'm trying in my mind to figure out how to reconcile these different conflicting situations. And I guess I end up not really knowing, not really thinking what the county's proposing is all that wrong. So that's kind of where I end up, interested in what others think.
Okay.
Did you,
Mr. Yates?
did you see, did you see the pass-through?
600.
Yeah.
Is that just retail, or is it also?
And I'm wondering, I'm trying to understand,
Residential.
is it included already in there? Because they're both, they're looking at it differently.
Yeah, it's hard to reconcile the way the county does it versus
Yeah,
how the
and
owner
I don't
does it.
know if that pass-through's kind of a double dip there on the county side.
Is it?
Right, because I look at just generally, I know Jose's got something here, but I mean, I just looked at basically the NOI for the three components. And when you combine those three, and then you look at the actual, it's high by 384,000.
Yeah, I
Yeah, which
was
could
going
be-
back and trying to see if that's where they were.
Right, and so what I did, and this is a very, broad stroke that I did here, but just looking at the difference of that 384, the difference in the expenses for the three components versus what was actually reported, is less than 17,000. So, whether it's there, whether it's pass-throughs, whether it's, projected income is too high, regardless. So I went through and just lowered it just to kind of test it and said, I took the NOI of the market apartments, lowered it by 300,000, which is still 84,000 over what it achieved. And it caps out it with the three added back into 357. But I know Jose's got something, because I think it's too high. I think
Yeah.
it should go up, but I think it's too high.
Well, the value I came up with lowers to 260 by pretty much looking at the same of the expenses, not on the market, not on the affordable or the retail. Because I think the RUBs are, the county considered on the retail part, not on the other.
Yes, right.
But I increased the expenses to 28% on the market apartments. And that brings down the NOI from that portion to 11,669,941. So the total value combined on all three would be 260, 347, 600.
Yeah, but my only, on that, so if you did that, because you didn't do quite as much as I did, but so what was your combined NOI for all three components?
5,121,730.
No, it can't be. That's gotta be 13 million.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, no, no.
I was like, wow.
Wrong guy.
The total NOI is 14,029,978. I was looking at the total expenses, but the total NOI is 14,29,000.
Versus
14, I'm sorry,
14,192.
so what was it, 14 what?
14,029,978.
Versus what it actually did was 13 million.
Yeah, it's lower by
8.4.
180 maybe.
205,000 higher. That's still a little high for me. But
Do you think with the silver diner lease, in half the year, maybe that's, I don't know. I didn't know how much silver diner.
Right, but that's in the 300. So to me, it doesn't, it's like, I'm just to the point where it doesn't matter whether you lower the income or raise the expenses, or you take it from
Yeah.
the commercial, or you take it from, I mean, I don't know whether it'll be allocated, but the problem is how they put it out here.
Yeah.
It's not spread out, so I can't tell you versus what their 13,824, 682, what their three compartments are. You know, myself, I lean more towards this, but I don't want to revert back to the county, so I would support that or somewhere in between if we can compromise. Mine was 257, 669, 6.
And the NOI,
I'm sorry.
and your NOI,
Hold on.
because I've seen both incomes of the law and the expenses.
Right. So that's,
And that's a good point. Silver diners can keep kicking. They want lease things.
Have you not read the lease?
13,892, 100. You know, which is only slightly higher than what they reported. However,
I was balancing the two out too.
Early on, the Collins presentation said this is a stabilized building as of, beginning of 2022, and that's how I am treating it. And I think a very modest increase because things are better.
right, I think it's going to probably go up next year.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so between the two of your calculations, it's fine with me for that reason. It ought to go up, it ought to go up modestly. I don't consider 11% modest.
Yeah.
So either of you has a better defense of voting for that, a better explanation of it.
Is it calculated?
There's smoke coming out of this calculator.
Just trying to look at the phone. 1 second.
That's right. I'd like to get it right.
Unlike the rest of the cases, I understand the argument concerning the cap rate, but
I can't upset the entire.
yeah,
I agree with you.
I think that's some of the counties can address going into next year.
Yeah, and if it isn't, I think it's going to be a very different.
Just
7
as
years.
a check, I took the 6.154 cap against the county's number and ended up at 235, which is way low. So I think your numbers
Would
are
you
good.
come up with 257?
257, 669, 6.
Okay, I come up with a lower number.
Lower?
257, 200, 363.
Within 1% of
That's
each
by
other.
increasing the expenses instead of 28 to 29. So
But
the
yours is
total,
really a more.
total NOI would be 13,867.
Lower. I have 13,892. Oh, because I'm. Yeah, but this is really clean. This is. Do you-
I think we're close, but this is just looking at a specific number and.
Okay, I mean, I'll do it, but I'm just saying, I didn't want you to go, this is a little too loosey goosey.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right,
the change I made is instead of 28% of the expenses, increased it to 29. And I come up with a value a little bit lower than what Mary has, but it's very close.
So you're seeing the increasing the expenses a little,
Well,
kind of offsets
pretty
the,
much the benefit of the
anything on
doubt,
the income side that's still,
given the benefit of the doubt that they are
okay,
spending on concessions.
all right. I'll do it.
Can you live with this?
Yeah, and I like what the county did with the concessions actually, because they still, let's say at 1123, they had $1,300 concessions for each occupant. That's like 20 units. I mean, it's, it's 5-digit figure. And we've got an 8% vacancy rate in the county, so I like that you avoided all of that.
Okay, all right, then I'm going to move to reduce the assessment to 257,669,600.
Are you doing yours?
Oh, yeah, oh, did you want to do yours?
I was just doing that to increase the expenses.
Yeah, I think yours is cleaner. Okay, all right, I withdraw my motion. Mr. Penaranda,
I'll go ahead and move that we reduce the total assessment to 257,200,400. That's by increasing the expenses on the market rate apartments to 29%.
okay, I'll second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, it's reduced to 257,200,400. And that is based on increasing the expenses on the market apartments to 29%.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you. Okay. I believe I saw Mr. Chikas. Is Mr. Steinhauser on?
I'm here for Grant today.
Okay, can you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, it's Armin Giannoni.
Okay. Third case on the agenda is RPC 35005024 at 1250 South Hayes Street. Mr. Giannoni, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, please.
Thank you. The subject property is the Ritz-Carlton Pentagon City. It is attached to the Pentagon City Fashion Center. It's a 365-room luxury hotel. It was built in 1989 and renovated in 2017. The current assessment of the revised assessment of 99 million roughly, or originally 102 million, represents a 19 million or 24% increase year over year, which we believe to be excessive. The revision made by the county only encompasses a deduction of the personal property value, which was not done in the original assessment, and no other changes have been made. I'm going to be working off of the county's test sheet while I present, as there's a few things that were changed, and I think this gives a better representation of what's going on. So it's worth noting that, first of all, in 2019 through 2021, the owner had reported their ground lease expense in their income and expense submissions, which we agree with the county should not be admissible as an operating expense. So you'll see in columns B, D, and F that the county pulls out those ground lease expenses, showing a slightly higher or considerably higher NOI compared to what was reported by the owner. And that's the only change in those years. For 2022, you can see column H is what the owner submitted to the county, which indicates an NOI of $6.1 million. This does not include any ground lease expense. They had stopped reporting that in 2022 because it had been, brought up in the past, and we wanted to avoid any confusion with that. The unique thing about this case is that there were a few expense items that were contested by the county. They reached out with some questions for us and for the owner, and we provided them with a trial balance that the owner used to complete their I&E submission, which had pretty much every line item, every account that went into the I&E. The county went through this and decided to pick out a number of expenses, which we don't necessarily agree should be not considered. And as a result, their reconstructed 2022 NOI is $7.8 million, which we again believe that which I'll get to some of the expenses, but which still is an NOI significantly lower than what was used to calculate the assessment, which was about $8.7 million. Now, just to quickly run through a couple of the expense items that were taken out that we don't necessarily agree. Number one was $1.5 million in sales tax. So $100,000 of that sales tax was attributable to 2022, the calendar year, and is a valid operating expense that is recurring every year and needs to be considered. So that roughly $99,000 needs to be considered. Additionally, there was $1.4 million taken out, and that was reported on the 2022 INE in relation to a sales tax audit that found that they had underpaid their sales taxes from December 2017 to 2020 by roughly $1.4 million. The county completely removed this expense. However, we do not believe, while we do agree that this expense should not be projected forward, we do believe that this needs to be considered, and it is attributable to roughly 3 years of time, which comes out to about $500,000 in expense of operating expense that was incurred by the operations of this hotel over that time. And as a result, actually, the INEs for those years were, the expense items were deflated by that amount concurrently. So again, we believe that these need to be considered. We do agree that the audit expense should not be projected forward. Additionally, there was a couple other items removed, including the expense for the property tax appeal, owner's expense, which is debatable, and then travel expense, which we believe definitely should be considered. They need to incur travel expense for employee trainings, conferences, etc. That's a valid operating expense and something that hotels incur. We do not believe that that should be removed. Additionally, there were some items in the common area maintenance that somehow ended up in the trial balance, which were, percentage rent payments and ground lease payments that somehow ended up in there. I don't believe it was a super material amount, especially on the ground lease and percent rent payments. However, we agree that those probably should not be included. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be focusing on column I, which is the county's reconstructed INE, where they are, again, stripping out a lot of expenses, which results in a revised operating expense ratio of about 75% of EGI. Again, according to what was reported in 2022, it was 79.45%. And in the assessment, they're using a 72% expense ratio. Being a full service luxury hotel where a lot of the income is tied to the food and beverage income, it is common to see higher expense ratios pushing the mid 70% opposed to some of the other hotel types that we previously discussed this year. We believe that this is an important component of calculating the assessment that needs to be considered. It's also worth pointing out that the DREA is projecting a decrease in operating expenses from their stripped expenses of $27.8 million down to $26 million or $26.1 million. We don't believe that is a supported adjustment to be made. We don't see how the expenses are going to go down from reported $29.5 million, revised $27.7, and now using $26 million to calculate the assessment, or 72% of EGI. So our requested assessment is $69.9 million. And in light of the county's acknowledgement of these expense categories, especially the audit, we believe that we were a little bit high on our expense ratio. As you could see in column K, the way that we calculated our requested assessment is we agreed with the county's room revenue, which we believe to be fair. It's projecting a slight increase over what was, or actually pretty considerable increase over what was achieved in 2022. We felt that the other income was on the low side. This hotel did very well with their food and beverage income, as well as other income, which mostly consists of parking and cancellation income. So what we did is we projected the 2022 actual other income to go forward into 2023. These are very close to the pre-COVID figures if you look at 2019. So we don't believe that these are going to be going up substantially in the future. We believe that this is a representation of, how the operating performance is going to be going forward. Ultimately, we come to a revenue of $37.9 million roughly, and we deduct a 78% expense ratio from that amount. And we use a 8.2% cap rate based on the RERC first tier Washington, D.C. hotel average, which If we use that cap rate and that expense ratio brings us to deducting personal property, of course, brings us to a value of about 70 million. We do feel that that 78% was a little bit on the high side. And just for, comparison's sake, if we were to use 75%, that still brings us to $82 million, which is considerably lower than the $99 million assessment as proposed by the county. So what this comes down to, in our opinion, is the expense ratio. And we hope that the board considers the items I've mentioned and, adjust them accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chikas for the county, please.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, board members. Good morning, Ramon. Speaking again of the Ritz-Carlton, as the board is very familiar, we'll be relying heavily upon the summary sheet that we look upon. The first and foremost, sales tax is not expense to the owner. It's not income to the owner. It's collected on behalf of the state and or the locality. You have retail sales tax that's going to be sent down to Richmond, and you have your transit occupancy tax that, of course, goes to the Northern Virginia localities, in this case, Arlington County. It's not expense to the owner, therefore it was pulled out. Regarding the others, obviously we do not believe that owner's expenses or the cost of the appeal itself of hiring a property tax firm should be included as a property expense as opposed to an owner's expense. Same thing we talked about with ground lease payments, amortization, leasing, etc. So we did pull those out, and we believe accurately so. As essentially admitted to, a lot of those should have been pulled out. So you do see a reconstruction in I, which did, of course, lead to a lessening of the operating expenses that were provided in the IME. When we look at column I, we'll see that the NOI that's projected is within 20% of what was achieved in 2019's historically high year. Again, when you look at the projection made by the assessment, we're 16 or 14% of the 2019 year. So again, good bit below what was achieved in 2019. What we are saying is that we do fully believe, based on the year that they provided to us in 2022, that 10% increase for 2023 is highly reasonable. Again, we've pounded on the fact of huge numbers of travel, record numbers of travel passengers coming through a national airport in 2022. Very little reason to believe that's not going to continue on into 2023. Ritz-Carlton itself is a name, has that panache. It's a highly luxurious, upper luxury, as they call it, upper luxury establishment, as they call it. The only one of its kind in the county. You can see the average daily rates that they're achieving. Even at that level, they're up 17% year over year. The revenue per available rooms up 72% year over year. Occupancy is now within 10% of what they achieved in 2019. We do obviously acknowledge that our projections on the revenue side are low, already lower than what they achieved in 2022 already. I'm hoping the board will note that. Again, almost 2.5% lower than what was achieved in 2022. The argument is made that why are the operating expenses not matching up dollar for dollar? We would obviously argue, and the board has heard before, you make one adjustment one place, we ask you to make another place. We're low on the income, so if we were to make adjustments on the operating expense, we would obviously ask you to keep in mind our low projections made on the revenue side. Again, in a third year of recovery. So we do believe that the projections made by the county are actually low on the income side. So even if we were to make adjustments on the operating expense, we would thusly do the same for revenues, as we expect those to continue their increase. Revenues increased some 86% last year, year over year. Again, once you make those adjustments to account for the inappropriate expenses that were included, NOI still increased by 323%. Again, within striking distance of 2019, we do believe that's highly reasonable that the property will go up by 11% this year. We look at the improvements made to the property on their own website. They talk about improvements to the conference areas, grand ballroom, diplomat room, ambassador room, plaza ballroom. They've improved their restaurant, the Sanchi, a signature restaurant concept. We've established, again, more people in the county. We've established after levels of high tourism visits to the county in 18 and 19. We do expect that fully to rebound in 2023. That falls in line with, again, the reports from National Airport and the amount of gate passengers coming through there, record levels. We do believe that the presented projection made by the county is highly reasonable, given that, again, the history that's been provided, where it's, again, within 14% of where they were in 2019. So still room for the growth levels that we believe will be achieved. Last point I would make is last year, the owners agreed to a value of $80 million. The owners' agents now believe that it's worth $11 million less than what they agreed to last year. Same representation. I don't know how that's possible after a year of some $6 million of NOI growth alone. We do believe, again, that based on our revision to include the personal property tax that in fact was not reported to the treasurer. So we did get that, once we were able to get that confirmed, we did make that adjustment in the revision column, which brought our recommended revision to $99,376,000. And we do believe that should be confirmed by the board. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Metzger.
I had no questions until Mr. Chica's last sentence, or the second to last sentence. The FF&E was not reported to the Commissioner of Revenue. Does that mean they didn't pay it or they're late or what? Because you're deducting it so that it's not doubly counted.
That was a question to the county, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we've talked about it before. Towards the end of the year, we get a report from the Commissioner of Revenue, which goes over TOTs, the transit occupancy tax numbers they have, as well as the personal property business tangible. And in that report, as of the date of valuation, it was not provided to the county, the county to our department. So once we confirm that through the new documents received in April, we were able to confirm that with the Commissioner of Revenue, and they did confirm that same amount.
Thanks a lot.
I have a question for Mr. Chikas. Can you clarify the comment that they agreed to the 80 million last year?
Yes, we offered a covenant. We offered a covenant and they signed it. It's dated August 10th, 2022, signed by Ashley Pieper,
Right.
Vice President.
It looks like we reduced it and they did that. So just because they signed it doesn't. Okay.
Ma'am, this case wasn't heard by you. This was withdrawn and was accepted by the owner.
Well, your cover sheet says differently.
I didn't make the cover sheet, so we apologize for that error.
Okay, I have comments for it later.
Later.
Other questions?
Yes, I got one.
Okay, Mr. Lawson.
Mr. Chikas, what, you say that the, questioning the tax rate and hiring an attorney, is to the owner and not the property? I didn't quite understand that. Why wouldn't that be an appropriate expense?
Because operating expenses are assumed to keep that income coming in, the income stream coming in. So the next property that doesn't hire a property tax consultant would still have that same income stream coming in, but doesn't have that cost associated with it. So not every cost that comes to a property is necessarily associated with the operations. It can be associated with the owner.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, you could have, I don't know, an action to create a union. So they hire, some lawyers to fight that. I think you're being too restrictive on that. How much was it, just so I know?
We recorded that as
$7,000.
$40,000.
Oh, wow, okay. Okay, that's it, Mary.
Okay, any final questions? Mr. Chikas, if you take a minute to wrap up.
Yes, ma'am. So highlighting what was just brought up, again, a property that was agreed to value-wise of $80 million now is projected to be worth $11 million less after a year of some 323% growth of NOI. As we've stated, we believe, in fact, you can verify that our projections for revenue are low. So even again, if our projections on operating expenses are also approximately 6% low, we would think those are somewhat of a wash. We do anticipate that, again, we're within 14% of what was achieved in 2019. Using the reconstructed column, they're within 22% of what was achieved in 2019. So we do believe it's highly reasonable that the property will increase by 11% in 2023. We do ask the board to confirm that revised value of $99,376,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Iannone, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Sure, thank you. I would just like to note that, one, that the owner does pay the sales tax. It is a relevant operating expense for a hotel. I'd also like to point out that the 2019 NOI was $10 million, where even with the county stripping out all of, a lot of, in our opinion, relevant operating expenses, the NOI is $7.8 million, which is still considerably below, about 22% below 2019. We will say that the county's revenue projection is on the low side. That's why we projected an increase in our approach. We do admit that our expense ratio was on the high side when we submitted this. And I would like to point out that if we were to use a 75% expense ratio, the indicated value would be $82 million. We believe that the county is consistently underestimating operating expenses on these hotels, and we believe that an adjustment needs to be made to reflect the actual operating performance of the property, even if that does include an increase to the revenue, which is what we did in our approach. And again, so, the indicator, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, it's just among the board. Before we start, I'd just like to address Mr. Chikas. You may not have, your aggressive answer that you may not have created this sheet. It's your case, and I would think it's part of your job to look at it. And if there's a mistake on page 1, I would think that you would have caught that initially. So, this says we set that in 2022, 2021, and 2020. So that being said, I mean, just because somebody signed an agreement, we had this argument last week that somebody agreed to something, so they must have thought that it was fine. But when they offer that, the county comes out and says you have to sign this or you don't get it. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they agreed to it. It's just what they settled for last year. So where's everybody on this for this year?
Well, I agree with what you just said. I mean, it could be that subsequent information makes them realize they made a mistake.
Right.
I'm not saying they did. I'm just saying that in a situation like these hotels where they went from, negative 2 million to 2 million and now 8 million. I mean, that's a dynamic that's changing very rapidly, and so there's many reasons why you compromise and settle a dispute.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't question it later.
Right. Mr. Yates?
I did not ask the question. I kept thinking about it and we kept moving beyond it. Anyway, concerning the sales tax. Sales tax, is that collected in county income side?
It's collected from the customer.
Right, but is it recorded in the income?
That's just what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Where they
because,
recorded.
if they're dropping it out of the expenses, I mean, it's like, okay, we're bringing it in here, but we're not allowing you to expense it out.
don't think so.
I don't think so.
That's what I was trying to understand, and I didn't quite get that, even in his wrap up. I wish I had asked that.
Yeah, but
I don't think sales taxes are recorded.
I don't think they're recorded as income either.
But maybe
Therefore,
they are.
Shouldn't be, but I want to know if they were.
yes,
And that's my mistake, not asking.
I
Because
thought
I
that.
tried to look for it, and I couldn't find it on the income side.
I mean, that absolutely should not be revenue, but maybe that's what they do. And
They
if
count it all.
they come here next year, the year after, they ought to be real clear on that. That's why they think it's an expense. Otherwise, it's obviously absurd. It's absurd as an expense.
They had paid more because it was underreported. How can you underreport it? Unless when they sell the room, they don't properly.
Well,
Yeah.
really threw it
I
back.
know.
1.4 million in sales tax throws
It's a real.
records off going quite far back.
Yeah.
They need to be real clear on that, and it's not our job to make them
Yeah.
clear. It's their job. But same thing, I came up with exactly the same. Maybe that's why it's not an absurd deduction. They're actually including it as revenue. We don't know that.
And I was looking at the expenses being off, but that causes me to question too. What is it? I was thinking, I don't know where you are, but you're usually good at this stuff. But I was looking at a higher expense.
Right, is my, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think I agree with both sides. I think the income is maybe low on what the county started with, and also the expenses are low. So what I did to kind of go into the middle ground, I increased the expenses to 74% instead of 72. That brings the total expenses to 26,814,000.
We got on a higher revenue level?
No.
No,
no,
okay.
Just,
Okay.
just expenses. And then deducting everything, the research for FF&E and the personal property comes to 90,849,000. Well, 850. 90,850,000.
And you increase the expenses to what? I'm sorry.
74%. Which doesn't really bring it up to even 27 million, but brings up enough to, make a.
So what was the final NOI?
The final NOI is 7,971,818.
Which is more in line with reconstructed
Right.
actual.
The operating.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I look back at the past, and it's really hard to tell because of COVID.
Right.
What an appropriate expense, but like not in the year of 2019, where they made their 8 million, it was 73.7. So that's
Right.
what you did.
A good test, yeah.
I think that makes sense.
What's low? Up expenses. It's hard to know because they book expenses a little bit differently than the
Right.
county standard.
But I think, like I said, it's in line, I think, with the reconstructed item. Okay.
You know, Mark, even if this 1.4 million underreported for sales tax, don't you think that's a one-time thing?
It is a one-time thing.
Yeah.
Hey, but what it did is it threw everything off historically, and I still don't know how they're reporting their income, reporting that tax on the income side or not, or the expense.
If they are, they got an accountant that ought to be fired.
That's for another department. Okay, Mr. Minoranda.
You're okay with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and move it. We reduce the assessment to 90,850,000 even. And that's by increasing the expenses to 74%.
I'll second.
Motion and a second by Mr. Lawson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. The assessment's reduced to 90,850,000 based on increasing the expenses to 74%. Thank you,
Thanks,
gentlemen.
Armand.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, the next case on the agenda, I don't know if we have Mr. Warren here or not. Oh, he is on here. Okay, it's RPC 200120002, property located at 461 North Thomas Street. I understand that you have conceded to the county's number. There wasn't a test, 15,830,500. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, since it's within the 10 days, and I'll move to well, wait, has anybody got any issue with that? I assume not. Okay, then I will move to allow the county to be confirmed at that number. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second by Mr. Metzger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, it's unanimous. It is confirmed at 15,830,500. The fifth case on the agenda is RPC 200130027 at 4301 Henderson Road. I understand that you've agreed to the county's revised number at 31,423,400. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, any discussion from the board? It's okay with that? All right, I will move to accept the county's revised number of 31,423,400. Second.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Lawson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. It's confirmed at the reduced amount of 31,423,400. And the final case is RPC 200130009 at 470 North Thomas Street. Mr. Warren, I understand you've accepted the county's revised number of 21,313,400.
Yes,
Is that
that is correct.
Any discussion from the board? Okay, I move to accept the revision to the county's revised number. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by myself and a second by Mr. Lawson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. The revised assessment of 21,313,400 is confirmed. Thank you, gentlemen. That was a quick 3 cases there.
Thank you, Blake.
Thanks,
All right.
Chris. Thank you all.
You're most welcome. That completes the agenda. Any other business?
How many meetings next week? What is that?
1,
That's Wednesday?
16.
Okay.
Yes, on the 16th.
That's what I thought. Confirmed it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then we will stand adjourned here. Excuse me. Stand adjourned here at 10:26. Re-adjourn next Wednesday at 9 o'clock on Wednesday, August 16th. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Madam Chair.